Well, hello and welcome back to another episode of SustyTalk, Edie's series of video interviews designed to keep us all feeling connected during lockdown and beyond. It is a pleasure to have a caller from Denmark on the line today. So I'm sitting and speaking with Ingrid Reumert, who is the VP for Global Comms, Sustainability and Public Affairs at Velux. And it's really great to connect. How are you doing?
Very well. Nice to meet you.
And you. And I understand that you are back in the office at the moment, unlike a lot of our contacts in the UK.
Yeah, exactly. So we've actually been back since mid-May, beginning of June, but of course with all the social distancing rules. But yeah, we are back. We're lucky to be back. Yeah.
And how have you found working like that?
So during the lockdown period, of course, it was I think it was rather difficult in the sense that a lot of the stuff that we still had to do with the sustainability strategy was actually around the creative part. With the communication and all that, and that is just so difficult to do on Teams or Zoom or whatever. So, but apart from that, of course, we have all the digital tools in place and everything. And luckily for us in Denmark, it was quite a short period of lockdown.
Mm-hmm. Great, and obviously we are talking just after that new strategy was launched, and we've covered it on our site. But for people that haven't seen it, would you mind giving a brief summary of the new targets?
Yeah, so we've basically spent the last over 2 years looking into every corner of the business. And we've come up with a sustainability strategy towards 2030, which in total has 15 targets covering areas such as diversity, inclusion, waste, circular economy, products, etc. And then on top of that, we have a specific and we think quite extraordinary commitment of becoming a lifetime carbon neutral. So that is really this new concept for corporate action that we've launched just this week.
And on that, it's for 2041, which is the 100th anniversary of the business. And essentially, Velux is using nature-based solutions to offset future carbon and then to sequester the same amount of carbon that it's emitted throughout its working life. And I wanted to dive into a bit as to why that approach was selected. So some companies, when looking into offsetting or removal, might look at man-made solutions or might look at renewable energy solutions, for example.
Yeah, so the concept of lifetime carbon neutral, it's basically taking both responsibility for our future, but also for past CO2 emissions, so our historical carbon footprint. Mm-hmm. So looking forward, we will follow the Science Based Targets initiative, and we have chosen the most ambitious path, the 1.5 degree path, following also the Paris Agreement, and that will be define our reductions, scope 1, 2, and 3 going forward. But then on top of that, we decided also to look at our historical CO2 emissions, because of course we were founded in 1941 and we've been producing roof windows all those years, around 80 years, almost 80 years. And of course, during all those years, we've created products and growth and jobs and all that, but we've also emitted CO2 to the atmosphere. So we thought we also have a responsibility for what we have already let out. And definitely, if you look at the future or the prognosis for climate change, after 2050, we have to become carbon negative. And that means we have to start capturing CO2 from the air already now, because of course there are certain sectors in our society that will have difficulty becoming carbon negative. So we started looking into, first of all, how could we do that? Also, of course, how much CO2 would it be? How would we calculate, etc. And we engaged in a dialogue with WWF because we wanted to tackle or to deal with not only the climate change crisis, but also the loss of nature.
Right.
So the biodiversity crisis. And we've we felt internally here that often the loss of nature gets lost in the debate, and that climate change and from obviously many good reasons, often takes the center stage, but right behind that there is the loss of biodiversity. So we talked about, could we find a way to take responsibility for our past CO2 emissions, but focusing both on climate change and on biodiversity loss of nature at the same time? We thought that would be the best and most sustainable way forward.
Mm-hmm. And obviously, I'm presuming you haven't been calculating carbon impacts and nature impacts since 1941. So how do you go back and make sure that it's the correct amount, and how can WWF help with that?
Yeah, so that's one great thing about being in an engineering culture, that we've had everything basically noted down more or less since 41. So it's all our calculation is based on production data. Mm-hmm. We went back basically into our old archives and found what we could. And when we've had some help from the Carbon Trust, London-based experts, of trying to verify our own calculations. So it wasn't just Velux making our own method, but really having it verified by a third party. And then we've discussed with WWF how to go about this. Mm. And basically what we ended up, what we will do is that we will have in total 5 forest projects in different parts of the tropical world. We are starting already now with Uganda and Myanmar. In total, it's 200,000 hectares of land of projects where that WWF will develop from scratch, also exclusively for Velux. And then over this next 20 years, we will capture the CO2 that we have emitted, so our historical carbon footprint. So like you said, in 2041, at our 100 years anniversary, we will be lifetime carbon neutral.
Mm-hmm. And you mentioned as well how the company isn't completely relying on offsetting and removal, that it has 1.5C aligned science-based targets. And obviously for science-based targets to be 1.5C, they have to include scope 3 as well. So what are some of the things that Velux has planned in the coming years to reduce emissions operationally and across that scope 3 as well?
Yeah. So signing up to the 1.5 degree target means that we also have to work really seriously with our value chain. Mm-hmm. And it is so for many manufacturing companies that, of course, the vast majority of CO2 is emitted in the scope 3 part. And for us, we have only 6% in scope 1 and 2 and the 94% in scope 3. And there we have committed to a 50% reduction in scope 3. Mm-hmm. And that's of course our entire value chain that we will have to take a look at. We will have to engage in a dialogue with our suppliers, but also of course look at product engineering, product design, product development, etc. So it will be a number of activities that we are starting now, really adding sustainability as a strong dimension in our product development and our supplier dialogue going forward.
And you mentioned at the beginning of our conversation as well that a lot of the work you've been doing recently is around the communication of the strategy. So how do you see the work happening in engaging consumers and other sort of downstream groups as well going forward?
Yes, so we definitely see the awareness and the interest rising also of consumers. And within our field, the building industry, there has been a great, big interest for sustainability issues for a decade or more, among the more professional target groups like architects or builders, etc. But now we really see it among also consumers. And of course, we hope also with this initiative and our partnering with WWF that we can also communicate to them that we are a company who takes responsibility and maybe try to do more than most. And then in relation to that, what we see is also that consumers are increasingly interested in their sustainability of their own home. Mm. So making their own home sustainable. And there, of course, we also wish to deliver what we can with our products that brings in daylight and fresh air, which is an important component, not least for ensuring health. indoors, and so we really see an increasing interest and awareness. And actually, in relation to COVID, here I think what we can see is that a lot of people have, of course, they've spent unfortunately a lot of time at home, and too much time at home. But of course, I think that's also made people reflect on their home, but also the health of buildings. So what kind of health impact do buildings actually have on people's lives? And their air quality and light levels is just extremely important.
Well, we've got World Green Buildings Week this month as well, so I can only see more conversation about that very soon.
Yeah, so exactly, and I think that's you can say maybe the positive side, if there is any, of the COVID pandemic, is of course a focus on the 90% of our time that we spend indoors and how indoor environments they impact our health, and of course also the role of buildings in the green transition. So I think that's one, you could say, positive or outcome that we're seeing at the moment.
Great. Well, I think that's a good note to end on. So thank you so much for your time today, Ingrid.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
No, and thank you to everyone for tuning in. If you've enjoyed this interview, we have a whole series of them are accessible on our website under the SustyTalk tag and on our YouTube channel. And although lockdown is easing here in the UK, we will be continuing these videos in the coming weeks and months. So hope to see you again on a future episode. But until then, stay safe, stay well, and keep up the Susty Talks.